Hey everyone, Lou here. After so many of you loved my video on Princess Maker 2, a child raising simulator game, I thought this time it'd be fun to try my hand at another child raising simulator game. Oh boy, did I completely underestimate the story of this one. Today, let's talk about My Child Lebensborn. My Child Lebensborn is a simulator game developed by Sarapeta Studios. Their only other game is called Shadow Puppeteer, so they're a very new developer company. The game would then be crowdfunded on Kickstarter around March of 2017 with very smooth development until the game released on May 8th, 2018 to overwhelming positive reviews, but not a ton of fanfare if you're not super into the indie game scene. Many praised the game for its brilliant storytelling, realistic portrayal of parenting, and childhood reactions to trauma. Some would criticize the game for being too bleak and too sad, but it was mostly drowned out by the extremely positive reviews. The game in particular seems to have been made to raise awareness towards the topics discussed, with a portion of the profits earned in the game going to the Child War Project, a charity made to protect children from prejudice and abuse due to war. Now, with all the developer information out of the way, I will have to warn that this game does not deal with very lighthearted subjects. Themes of bullying, abuse, CSA, prejudice, and obviously the you-know-what party will be discussed throughout the game and this video. Although I have to censor my wording due to YouTube, I will be deleting comments trying to side with the you-know-what party or defend such disgusting actions that still ripple throughout society today. Period. Now, let's get started with the story. Now, before our story begins, we do need just a little bit of a history lesson. Okay, so, when Norway was overtaken by Germany, pregnant women were taken to Germany to give birth to children of their soldiers. The babies born would be raised in the Lebensborn program in Germany. This was basically a really stupid racist thing, where the you-know-what party thought people were only valid if they had blonde hair and blue eyes because they were the healthiest, as you-know-who put it. It's stupid and disgusting. Yet after World War II ended and Norway was freed from Germany's control, the Red Cross Association thought it would be more ethical for children to be raised by their biological Norwegian parents. Except the issue with your kid is that their biological mother didn't want them after they arrived in her custody, so they were taken to an orphanage. You play as a parent who decides to adopt a child from the Lebensborn project and give them a life of love and safety that every child on this planet deserves. You either pick Klaus or Karin, and the story picks up about 2 to 3 years after you adopted Klaus or Karin on their 7th birthday. The story from there feels pretty realistic to childhood, specifically any child growing up in a situation where they're dealing with prejudice, bullying, and abuse from outsiders. This game is meant to show you what half German or German children in general had to deal with growing up post-World War II, and boy does it open the conversation to it. Some said it was unrealistic with how much hatred your child receives from adults because adults, quote, keep to themselves. We have to take into account that this was the 1950s and only a few years after World War II. The hatred for Germany and the encouragement for racism and prejudice around the world was pretty fucking strong. Your child being insulted for being German by adults isn't that unrealistic at all when you put that into perspective. Others complained on why the hell would some adults just automatically know your child is German, but this is also an incredibly small town from what's been described, and we all know how fast news travels in a small town. Your child was also caught speaking German a couple of times in some areas of the game. Now, throughout the game, there is ups and downs, just like life itself. Sometimes your child will have days where they come home beat up and dirty from children physically hurting your kid, to days where they're excited to go to school and feel safe around you. That's like life itself, I guess. There's highs and lows, and I feel like that's realistic. Time also moves by pretty fast in the game. Sometimes the game will just skip a whole couple of months, and I do appreciate that because we're shown that there are breaks from the misery where we can put in our heads that there will be months where everything is fine and then months where everything is horrible. Though one thing I think not a lot of people really talk about is what happens to your child near the end of the game. In the last month or so, your child gets a new teacher, and although the game never says it, it's implied your child's fear of touch and refusal to take a bath that your child was assaulted by the teacher. especially when a drawing from your child in the room seems to imply that as well, from the teacher being drawn with 3 arms, and one of those arms being drawn in a particular area. I don't know how I feel about this. There's a part of me that wants to say it's going too far in the writing, but then again, the amount of times I've heard this happening to children like ours in the game who had to deal with abuse and severe bullying, well, I can't say it's unrealistic. It's just extremely upsetting and honestly horrible. Your sweet, adorable baby has to go through something so fucking traumatic that'll undoubtedly leave scars in their mind. However, it's not bad for them at the end either. By the end of the game, you're given money by your child's biological father, so the two of you can leave town and try to find another place that'll be more accepting for German children and immigrants. With that, there's also heartbreaking messages from real adults born of the Lebensborn project who shared their experiences with the developers as part of the research. Reading just these tiny excerpts from people and realizing they weren't that old to be dealing with all that at a young age, it was just a very touching and eye-opening experience. Upon my further research, apparently your child's story was heavily inspired from a woman's story told to the developers, so that was actually pretty shocking, but also not shocking. It's a conversation we don't really talk about, and it's the innocent children who end up victims because of the actions of disgusting people. I mean, it's especially a far more relevant topic when we all saw how Russian children and teenagers were treated online because of the situation in Ukraine. Despite how deeply upsetting and heartbreaking this game is, I honestly think it's very beautiful and portrays life as a realistic thing as you can. Sometimes life has its ups and downs, especially as a child, but sometimes we're lucky and we have a beautiful, loving family who can make you forget the downs by doing the little things. To me, I think that's a very beautiful message. Overall, the game's story has a deeply upsetting but wonderful heartfelt message and opens the door to a conversation not many people have opened up about yet. Now, the gameplay isn't nearly as complicated as something like Princess Maker 2 as an example. You have 3 bars: hunger, cleanliness, and affection. If you neglect food and cleanliness in particular too much, then your child will run away and it's game over. The rest is mostly optional and pretty much a curiosity test to see how you do as a parent. You can be a strict parent who overworks and emotionally neglects your child, or you can be a very loving and nurturing parent who manages to balance work and love. They say your choices matter, but I'd say it doesn't really from my perspective. The ending is still the same, but I suppose it's just trying to see how the journey from A to B changes, rather than trying to change the outcome of B to C. I think the most interesting part of this choice mechanic is the player statistics at the end of every chapter. When I play a game of choice, I typically do my first playthrough based off my gut instincts. In this case, I believe children should be raised with optimism and honesty, so to see how little people wanted to be honest with their child was really surprising. This was really interesting though, and I guess sort of gives an insight to how many future parents or current parents prefer to sugarcoat things for their children instead of giving them honesty. I don't know, food for thought I guess. I thought that was really interesting. The only thing about the gameplay that was a real struggle for my own personal preference was balancing having money and making food. I tried to buy my daughter every toy I saw in the store because damn it, she deserves it. And I gotta say, saving up that money and buying food was a really tricky thing. I almost never worked overtime because I always felt bad about leaving the poor girl all alone. On second thought, maybe this means I'll be a pushover mom someday who spoils their kid too much. Whoops. To me, I do have to agree though that although choices don't matter, but I'm gonna counter-argue it, at least gives the illusion that they don't matter enough where you play the game twice just to see what it's like to do a different parenting style. The game isn't honestly that difficult to play though. Once you get the hang of saving money, foraging, and feeding your kid, then you sort of fall into a routine and you don't miss out on the important things you actually want to do with your kid. Though I will say it was kind of shitty where you're trying to feed or bathe your kid and they're just not cooperating. Then the next day they complain they're hungry when honey, I tried feeding you last night, what the fuck? Though it is a little silly for cooking to take up so much damn time. Each dish you try to cook takes off an entire part of your day. If you ask me, it should be like eating, where it only takes about one tick and you can just do it over and over again instead of wasting the whole day for cooking. For me anyway, because I had to cook a lot of blueberry jam on toast on my first playthrough. Overall, the gameplay is pretty easy, but your choices definitely do not matter. The choices are more like a thought piece or a conversation piece if you're playing with friends. If anything, this game is actually really relaxing. This game was just a really lovely one to play as part of a late night gaming session to relax yourself. This game is honestly a hidden gem among indie games. From its relaxing gameplay, gut-punching story, and opening the door to a serious topic so wonderfully, genuinely an amazing game. You can play the game for only $8 on Steam, but it typically goes on sale for around $4. However, if you don't have a computer to play this game, the game is also available for purchase on the iPhone and Google Play stores. I don't really know how the game operates on those systems, but it looks like it plays fine. My own guess is that if you can play Twisted Wonderland on your phone just fine, it should be able to handle this game smoothly. And for those who wonder about a sequel, one is actually in the works. It's called My Child New Beginnings and will be a spiritual sequel to the original. It's not an actual sequel, but more of a remake that focuses on the child-raising aspects and takes place in a more modern world. The images you see on screen is concept art I found from a Japanese article showcasing the game's announcement, and the game is expected to release next year, so you can bet that I will absolutely cover this game once it's released. That'll be the end of this video. Did you feel it was a good game? Or was some of it pretentious and artsy? As always, let me know down below. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say, and be sure to share this video around if you want to convince your friends why this is such a good game. Hey guys, thanks for watching! If you liked the video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing if you're new. If any of you would like to help support my channel in any possible way, my Ko-fi page is down below in the description, along with all of my social media. For any subscribers, new or old, who'd like to help with video ideas, or maybe just want to talk about anime or something, I have a fan server linked down below. See you next time!